Hey everyone, and welcome to another video, and today we're taking a look at another product off the AliExpress line, and that is the latest iPhone 12 Pro Max silicone Magsafe case. So if you follow the channel, you've probably seen that I've done a review on several of these cases in the past. The very early ones didn't have Magsafe. The later ones that I actually reviewed, I believe just before Christmas, they were getting basically almost identical in terms of the feel, the fit and finish, as well as the Magsafe functionality to the original item, and they were roughly around a quarter of the price. Now this particular one is a little bit more, and the main reason for that is this one supposedly also does the animation. So that was the one thing that was actually lacking on all the previous sort of replicas, and it was the fact that when you first put the case on, it wouldn't do the pop-up animation depending on whatever color the case is. Now I have way too many of these and I hardly ever use them. For those of you who do watch the channel regularly, you'll know that I use this replica leather case, even though I actually hate the buttons on it. The reason I use it is basically because when I'm at work, the silicone cases tend to snag on the pockets of my work clothes. So when you're putting it in and out your pocket, quite often it'll basically pull the pocket with it and anything that's in it. So for that reason, even though I actually prefer the leather case, the silicone cases, sorry, the buttons are normally a lot better on these cases in comparison to the leather cases, for the simple reason that the leather cases only work if they have the metal buttons, and whilst most of them will advertise them as having metal buttons, generally very few actually do. Sometimes they'll provide you pictures saying yeah they've got metal buttons, hoping that you just don't open a case once it arrives, a dispute case that is, once the product arrives and it turns out to not have metal buttons. Anyway, so this is the product with the packaging. So as you can see, it does come with a green tear strip on it. It's not the best in terms of the seal, so as you might be able to see there, it's not exactly all the way in, but unlike some where you could basically open the whole package, even with the pull tab still in place, this one is at least kind of securing it. Now this one was actually, as I say, it was more expensive. So the Magsafe replicas that I got just before Christmas, I believe they were roughly around about between £8 and £12 here in the UK. Now obviously since Brexit's kicked in, everything that we order from AliExpress has got 20% more expensive anyway. But this one in particular was a lot more expensive. So these ones range from roughly around about £20 up to possibly about £25. So you're coming up to about half of what the genuine case actually costs. And I don't know whether it was because of that, but this one was actually sent slightly differently. So normally what they come in is you have this, you have a clear plastic wrap over it, and then it's just shoved into a bubble wrap envelope. This pull tab is normally folded over like this, and when it arrives it never quite sits properly. But yeah, that's what you normally get. This one was actually in a bubble wrap envelope, but it was inside this further sort of hard cardboard case, if you like. So initially when I actually opened the package and I saw this, I wasn't very impressed, because I thought they'd literally just taken the case out, put it in that and sent it, even though the advertisement actually said it was supposed to mimic the genuine item. So without further ado, let's dive in. So let's try the tear strip, see how well these work. The last few that I actually tried, they didn't actually tear very well. So with this one, yeah, that's not too bad. It did actually work. So let's take it out and see what we get. So firstly, it's the wrong way around. So the package is meant to actually be the opposite way around. So the iPhone, whenever you take out a genuine one, it's normally always facing the opposite way. One thing straight away is all of the genuine ones have a sort of protective plastic, not plastic, but a paper sheet over the case. This one doesn't seem to have it. What else do we get in the pack? So there's nothing else in there. We get one sort of Apple-like sheet. Okay, so the reason that they have to include this, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it on there, is because it includes magnets they have to actually include this to state that obviously anybody with a pacemaker or any other medical equipment might want to be aware of that. So first impressions is it's not as good as the previous replicas that I actually got before Christmas, the Magsafe ones with the batteries built in. What I'm looking for here is just on the corners of this card. Sometimes you get transfer on these corners, and if you get transfer on the corners, then generally that means that the inside of the case corners aren't actually seated properly. So if I just check this one, yeah, there is a tiny little bit of that just in this bottom right hand corner, so you're probably not going to be able to see it because of the lighting, and also because of how blurry the image is. Let me just try and get that in focus. I'll try and get a video of that and put it in post. But first impressions is they've got the inside a bit better. So let me just get rid of auto tracking. So firstly, the magnet on the inside, they've actually color coded it like the genuine ones do, I believe, whereas all of the other, as you can see from this one, so all the other ones do this, where they put a white ring inside rather than color coding. Secondly, the ring around the camera is new, so I can't remember if the other ones actually had this sort of raised lip. I thought that was actually reserved just for the leather cases. Buttons and everything seem pretty much the same as the previous ones, but now the moment of truth. So just get rid of that. So here is my iPhone, and if I just bring it next to it, that may not have been in focus, so what I'll do is I'll just repeat it again. And there we go. So as you can see, it does do the animation when you put the case on. So if I just push it in correctly, you can see it does the pop-up animation with the blue icon. And let's just have a look. Yeah, this one is pretty much perfect. The one slight defect that I've noticed is just around all of the edges. You've got a slight bit of sort of leftover raised silicone on the seam, if you like, which I don't believe you would have on the genuine item. It doesn't seem to go all the way around. From the power button round to the bottom is all basically been sanded down quite well. Between those two buttons, it's really bad. So that should be quite noticeable in terms of there is a very distinct raised section, which, considering obviously how small that section is, it's probably quite hard to get in there to file it down, to flatten it down. But considering who these are made for, obviously Apple, I would have expected it to be perfect. Now the other thing that I want to test is the Magsafe. So one second. So if I grab a Magsafe accessory, so if you haven't seen this, I did a video on this particular battery pack, link will be in the top right. And if I bring that next to it, as you can see, it grips on real nice. Now, because I've actually enabled this, one thing that you will notice is because I'm currently running iOS 14.5 beta, it doesn't actually do the charging animation for Magsafe. However, it does still do the sound. So there you go. You see, it doesn't do the animation on my particular phone, but normally it would. It does do the sound though. And in terms of grip, as you can see, it's more than strong enough. And obviously that's a combination between the two. So that's a combination of the battery pack, which has the strongest magnets out of any MagSafe device that I've actually tested, and the magnets that are actually built into the case, as well as the phone. In terms of things that I look for, having tried quite a few of these cases now, is this little section by the charging port is a little bit floppy. So it tends to move about a bit more. All the way around the case, obviously they've got a sort of hard surface that is basically reinforced by the phone. That tiny little section there, because there is nothing behind it, essentially it's far too narrow for them to actually put anything in there. It normally becomes a little bit floppy. The only other thing that I really look for on these is inconsistent raised edges. So sometimes what you get is along these edges of the phone, what you find is maybe your top right hand corner or your bottom left hand corner, something like that, will be slightly higher than other parts of the case. And the main reason for that isn't actually the width or the dimensions of the case, but it's actually to do with the surface on the inside. So because the sort of suede Alcantara material doesn't get pushed down in the corners correctly, it actually stops it from seating correctly in the case. So far, in terms of this case, everything that I can see is pretty much bang on. So this, as far as I can tell, it's a genuine case. There's nothing that I can see that would tell me otherwise. It's got the animation, it's got the sound, it's got the clicky buttons. Buttons are super responsive. The silicone isn't actually that grabby, so this one actually feels slightly different. They always have slight differences between them anyway. So what I have found, having tested quite a few early replicas, and then as you get towards the sort of maturity of that particular shape and model, generally the materials get better, the fit and finish gets better. The Apple logo, for example, the sort of raised section of the darker inlay, sometimes what you can find is there's a very distinct inlay of that Apple logo, and you can actually feel it. On this one you can get a tiny bit of the outline, but other than that, I mean, it's seated very well. There's no noticeable real edge to it, so it's not going to catch and become more noticeable over time. The camera protection, the raised camera lip, looks pretty good. Yeah, this is for all of those people out there that are always asking me about iPhone 12 Pro Max or any of the 12 series cases. This is the one that I would actually recommend for somebody that wants as close to the real item as possible. I think the real one will probably have better fit and finish in terms of the seam that you have around the silicone, but other than that, and bearing in mind that you're very rarely going to be looking at that, generally you're going to be looking at it like this, or you're going to be basically holding it, and just the feel of the case. One thing to note is over time that seam, the one that sort of remains, does wear down, but so does the silicone. So in my experience, all the silicone cases that I've ever used at work, generally they will wear down quite quickly, which I don't mind. I don't necessarily need it to be looking brand new all the time. With the leather ones, I actually purchased this one thinking that it will patina, and obviously because it's not an actual real leather, all that tends to happen is you might be able to see it there, it just chips, and as well as this edge as well. You may not be able to see it in this particular lighting. Might be easier for me to show it with the phone actually in place. But yeah, the one thing that the silicone case does do over the leather, which used to be the other way around, is it adds a bit more bulk. So for some reason, this leather case, because it's literally just cardboard that they've had leather pressed around, it is very thin. And I've actually seen this even in comparison to a lot of other thin cases. This, just the feel of it, it feels a little bit chunkier. just a tiny little bit, but that's only because I've been using this case for so long. If you hadn't had another case, and this was literally the first case that you throw on your phone, maybe having used the clear cases, which are always really chunky, then you'll probably find that this is probably narrower than most of the stuff that you've experienced before. But having literally come from this one straight to this, I can tell you it's slightly, only ever so slightly thicker. But yeah, the feel and everything about this case is really good. So this will be one that I will recommend. Now and before I finish this video, I want to make this absolutely clear. So I will add links in the description below for the seller that I purchased this case from. However, with AliExpress, as soon as the seller has sold all their stock, they will simply delete the link. That same seller might add more items. A lot of times what you tend to find is, especially with AliExpress, is sellers will just sell up their batch and then they'll just disappear. The shop will just close down. Whether that's because of bad feedback, whether that's because they managed to get a hold of I don't know, warehouse stock and they literally just sold it all, or whether they're doing what this particular seller told me he was doing, which was drop shipping. So he's not actually got any stock, he buys it straight from the manufacturer, which is why this took so long to actually arrive. So initially when I ordered this, I believe we were actually in January, we're now in March, and the reason it took so long for it to come, bearing in mind that generally aside from Christmas and end of year time, AliExpress generally you can get most items within 2 weeks, and obviously Brexit aside, the reason it took so long was because the seller was celebrating, I believe it was Chinese New Year, and it wasn't just the seller, it was the drop shipping company, so the main manufacturer, basically the source for the case itself. So if the link that I put in the description below isn't working, rather than asking me for links, what you want to do is go on AliExpress, search for iPhone 12 Pro Max or whatever phone you're searching for, a silicone Magsafe case, so silicone case Magsafe, and you want to put at the end of it 1 for 1. And that will get you the silicone case that is basically identical to the real one. If you want this particular one, then you just add in the words pop-up animation, and that will then find you one that has the pop-up animation. Now bear in mind that these will more than likely be twice the price of everything that you see listed. So most people, they look at it and they think, I'm not paying twice the price for a simple pop-up animation. But for those of you out there that want it as close to perfect, or if you want to gift it to somebody and you want to make it look like you've bought the real deal, then obviously you want one that actually does the animation. And for you guys, obviously it's still, even delivered to the UK, still half the price of what the genuine item costs. So in my mind, that's still worth it. I've got nothing against buying directly from Apple. It's just, I don't, because I am careful with my devices, and because generally I buy a new one every year, I never actually get the use case out of the case, excuse the pun, simply because I don't have it on the phone long enough. So for a lot of people, they'll maybe invest in a leather case, they'll pay the £100, they'll buy the leather case because they know they're going to keep it for maybe 2 years, and it's going to keep their investment protected. So it'll keep the phone brand new, or at least protect it if it falls. With me, because I know I never drop my phone, whenever I'm at work it's in my pocket, I have a separate pocket for it, I only ever handle it with my gloves off, all those kind of things. I take basic precautions that mean that down the years I've never dropped a phone, and even if I did, most of the time it's got a case on it. When I'm in those scenarios, it's only at home that I usually tend to go caseless. So for that reason, I don't buy directly from Apple, because I'm just paying more for a product that I'm not really going to use for very long, and anybody that I hand the phone down to, they're not really going to appreciate the difference between this and basically a genuine Apple case directly from Apple. So obviously there's always use cases out there for people that want to just pay the money, buy the real deal. But in terms of these replicas from AliExpress, and obviously I've made a bit of a thing on my channel, and it's helped me bring in quite a lot of viewers who are interested in these kind of deals, these kind of products, if you like. And a lot of people still post on other videos of mine asking me to do reviews on certain things. So yeah, for that reason, obviously I like checking these out, but I think I've probably exhausted everything to do with the 12 Pro Max that I could find. Similar thing with the AirPods Max as well. But yeah, this gets 2 thumbs up. So for anybody that hasn't already done so, please do subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon. That way, if I do find any more products out there that are worth the purchase, then obviously you'll be notified those, you won't miss out on those videos. Also, I'd really appreciate if you give this video a thumbs up. That way it'll be shared with more people and more people can benefit from a bargain. And finally, thank you very much for watching.